Hello, friends, and welcome to Tack Talk with Mrs. Hood. I started this podcast to learn from teachers of all kinds, TAK, see what I did there, through conversation about their teaching and who they are as people. My guest for this episode of the podcast is Chris Hamilton. Chris is a high school English and drama teacher in Washington State. I enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you do too. By the way, you can now find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podbean. It's pretty cool. And now, on to episode 5. All right. Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. So, you are a high school English teacher in Washington State.
That's
And
right.
you guys ended school when? Last week?
Yeah, officially our last day of school is Thursday, the 18th.
Did you guys do something formal to say goodbye to students for the summer?
Well, there was a like a senior graduation, like literally drive-through graduation that we did, not for like the rest of the students though, unfortunately. Like all of my students, other than at Zoom meetings, I haven't seen since March 17th. And if I happen, and unless I happen to see them at the graduation, the drive-through graduation.
Wow. Was it rough doing the drive-through graduation? What did it make you sad?
Yeah. It did, but there was a really great energy there. I think the energy there was really positive, and it was a pretty unique situation, and it was actually kind of cool. Like, all the kids, they get to kind of like caravan these cars full of kids through. They get to pop out, like walk across a stage, and then get their diploma, shake hands with the principal, and and in this way, like the students are limited to like one carload. So sometimes they're packing as many family members as they could in one car, but then they can like honk their horns, and cheer from the car. And I counted at least 2 pickup trucks that had 14 people in the back.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the very last vehicle that went through was a flatbed that had, I don't know, over 20 people in the back.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
it was
funny.
pretty great. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of sad in one way, but like in another way, it was kind of like, hey, we're still doing this, like we still want to honor the class of 2020 and show them, the support and give them the kudos that they deserve.
It's got to be historic, of course, for everyone this year. It's a historic year, of course, and it's unique, and it has its own being triumphant over hardship and weird circumstances.
Yeah, it really is. We kept talking about, hopefully this is a unique situation. And if it is, then, maybe from now on, hopefully we don't ever have to go through this again, but, like they could be that class. We were the class that did the drive-through graduation. So hopefully that's a positive distinction, I guess.
Right. So let's go back. How did you get into teaching originally, and why English in particular?
So it to go kind of further back, I had always kind of wanted to be a teacher, I guess. It's ironically, I had a pretty rough time in middle school with being bullied, and I had and I also had a really rough time in high school too, and I didn't particularly enjoy high school. But I feel like I made it kind of through with the help of some really great teachers who are really supportive and really helpful. And that was kind of a thing that I was always very appreciative, as they kind of helped to shepherd me through the most difficult times of my life. And I was like, well, I'd kind of like to do that too, but like my path to teaching in a classroom was a bit circuitous. I started off in I got my bachelor's degree in theater, but with a specific theater education track, and so that was my BA. And then I ended up teaching in Japan for a year after that, teaching English language
Cool.
in Japan,
Mhm.
like as a second language. And
Mhm.
then I came back and I taught at the Woodland Park Zoo and for the Seattle Children's Theater. And those were great jobs, but they don't quite pay the bills quite like being a public classroom teacher. So
Mhm.
um, I ended up going back and getting my master's in teaching at
Okay.
UW,
Mhm.
and I went through that program, and then I spent and I did that for English, primarily at the time because they didn't offer a program for teaching theater to get for
Mhm.
credentials.
Mhm.
And so you kind of had to pick a core concentration, and English was always my most preferred subject. So
Mhm.
I did a little, I had to do some extra work for that because I wasn't an English major, but
Yeah.
I did that. And then ironically, um, somewhat ironically, I ended up teaching in high school, mostly English and only a little bit of theater, although theater was my bachelor's degree. And for a
Mhm.
brief period of time, I was certified to teach English, but not theater because I hadn't gone through the paperwork process yet,
Oh.
although I had an academic major in it. But
And so
um,
theater
yeah,
and
and then
drama are
yeah,
your
go ahead.
theater and drama are your primary passion, and then kind of teaching English secondary, I would
Yeah, I
say.
mean, yes, I guess, but it's still something that I find very fulfilling, and
Sure.
it's the thing I teach most of. And if
Mm-hmm.
anything, I think that by teaching it, I've come to a much greater appreciation of
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So there were certain things that it wasn't until I started to teach them that I didn't understand them as well, even myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we know that as teachers too, like when you go through teacher training, that's one of the things that, like, if you can get students to kind of teach other students, that's one of the ways
Right.
that they develop their own understanding. And so um there are certain things like that I teach as an English teacher, like poetry, that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really come to a full appreciation of until I had to teach it, and had to
Mm-hmm.
learn more about it, and got more of an appreciation for it. So
It's kind of like that in math, in mathematics when, I didn't like geometry in school, but when you have to teach like a geometry unit in eighth grade math, it's increases your appreciation, your understanding for it as you have to teach it. So I can relate to that for sure. And you said you taught in Japan for a year. What are some
yeah.
unique differences and similarities of the schools and the students?
Yeah, so this is so about 10 years ago was
Hmm.
when I was in Japan, and
Okay.
I taught in a junior high, and so their junior high was a seventh, eighth, and ninth grade,
Mm-hmm.
and so I it the area of Japan that I was in was very rural,
Mm.
so it's not, you don't picture Tokyo, picture rice paddies as far as the eye can see.
Mm-hmm.
So they're relatively small-ish schools. Like I taught at two different junior highs, and one of them had like three different classes, or four, maybe it was four different classes of each of the grades,
Mm.
and the other one had like two different classes of each of the grades. So, like, for example, for seventh, eighth, and ninth grade, they would have like two classes of, like, I don't know, like roughly 30 kids,
Okay.
and those kids would all stay together, and
Mm.
they would have like their own classroom, sort of, but the different teachers of the different subjects, like math, science, English, everything else, would kind of rotate. So it's not like the teachers
Oh.
had their own classroom,
Mm-hmm.
the students had their own classroom,
Mm-hmm.
and then like it was like the teachers would rotate.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so that was kind of something that was kind of different, that I thought was
Mm-hmm.
always interesting. I know that for the science classes, they did have like a science lab that sometimes they would go to for like certain things, but otherwise they basically stayed with the same group the whole time, and they would just kind of
That's what they want us to do in the fall for COVID, right?
oh yeah, yeah, well, yeah, interesting. um yeah, and like like, what are some other things, some of the, like, no one had a whatever pack a lunch.
Mm.
Every person, every student, every teacher, every administrator was expected to eat the school lunch.
Oh.
Um, for better or for worse. And unless you had very specific dietary restraints like allergies or religious exceptions, but you were just kind of expected to, and so you would just sit there and eat with the students, and it did kind of help build rapport with the students and stuff. It was kind of nice. And one of my favorite things, though, about the Japanese school system that I always remember is that they at the schools they don't have any like janitors or
Oh.
custodial staff. And what they do basically is for like, I don't know, like 20 minutes every day, every single student, every single teacher, every principal, vice principal gets down on their hands and knees and scrubs the whole school, basically.
Wow.
So like they would, that's part of, like cleanliness, right? But so like everyone would get out their like little rags, and you would like scrub the floors down, scrub the counters down. You'd go outside, maybe kind of sweep the walk. And like, when you have, a couple hundred kids and adults, you can get it all done in 20 minutes, and I thought it was really cool because like the kids would really take ownership over keeping the school clean and stuff, and I thought that was a really great culture to build there.
I wonder if it's like that in every institution there, if in the workplace and other places.
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I can't comment on that. I can only on my own personal experience, but I know that that's a really common thing across schools there, not just where I was. So.
Wow, I think that's great. I think that probably encourages students, teaches them how to clean first of all, and also how to take ownership for their materials and their buildings that they use. That's awesome. I wonder how we diverged from that, or how that happened that were different from that.
Yeah, I don't know. It just. Yeah, it was great. You just got the sense that it was like a responsibility that everyone had. And I mean, of course, there's some kids who are like, not really caring, or a few kids who are just like trying to avoid it. But like, for the most part, everyone was doing it, and you set examples, and other people follow. So.
Okay. And I had a question about the teachers rotating. I know, of course, in my school and other schools like it, teachers having their own classroom means that they have their own supplies, they have manipulatives, they have all kinds of posters. So is that a lot different then in Japan?
Well, yeah. So the rooms that the classrooms that I would be in didn't tend to have things up on the walls at all. So like, not like Glad posters or anything like that, but the teachers sometimes would have like a little cart. They might bring a cart with them to the classroom, or they would just bring their materials for that class period. There was like a teacher's, I don't want to call it a teacher's lounge, because it was more like a teacher's office, like a teacher's workstation, basically. And up at the front would be like a big long tables where like the principal, which they call the Kocho sensei, would kind of sit up there, and then the vice principals were all kind of sitting up there, and then they were all like looking out at all the other tables, and all the other tables which had like computers at them. Each teacher kind of like had their own workstation. So like when they had their own prep period, they would be there like working on their prep and doing other stuff, and then they'd have a schedule like, oh, hey, it's almost time for third hour, we've got to go to room this one and teach this English class. And so I guess
it's kind of like colleges here.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, a little bit, although like these kids like, stayed together as a group, like, at the beginning of the year.
That's true.
And their school year starts in March, but at the beginning of the year, they would, you get put in that group, and that's the group you're with, at least for that year. I don't know if I don't remember if they mix it up, once you graduate a grade or not, but at least for the whole year, basically, they'd be in that group.
And so that's a good segue into what we're doing in the fall. They're trying to keep student groupings together, or at least have less transitions. And one of the things I know one school is thinking of that I'm familiar with is having 2-hour blocks for each period, and rotating the schedule so that it's like periods 1 through 3 on Monday and Wednesday, and periods 4 through 6 Tuesday and Thursday, and Friday prep day,
Hmm.
something like that. What
I've heard
options have
stuff
you?
like,
Mhm.
oh, I was just saying, I've heard stuff like that too. It's, like there's so many things. They're like, well, we can't tell you because we don't know what's going to look like yet. And
Yeah.
so the types of things that I've kind of heard a little bit more about seems to be about limiting the total number of kids in the room,
Mm.
because like, according to, as far as I understand, the OSPI, State Department of Education, is stipulating that, like, at the beginning of the school year, at least, likely, if you're in the classroom, kids are supposed to be 6 feet apart from each other whenever possible, whatever that means.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so what that essentially, I think, means in the classroom is that each kid needs 36 square feet.
Mhm.
And that means that there's really no, I don't know of many ways you can really have like 30 kids or more, even, some of those classes
Mhm.
that get like overloaded,
Mhm.
and still follow that stipulation. So some of the things that have been hearing as possible options is that, like, you have like an A and a B schedule, but like
Mhm.
half the kids will come to the school on the A day and the other half of the kids will come to school on the B day, and you kind of alternate back and forth like that,
And do
and then
distance learning in between when
and
they're
distance
home?
learning in
Mm.
between, yeah,
Mhm.
or possibly even doing like a week thing where like A kids are there for 1 week, then B kids are there for a week,
Wow.
and the weeks off and in between they're doing distance learning. And I don't know how much I like that plan, but I think it's good that they're at least trying to explore as many different options as they can.
Mhm.
I imagine that whatever they come up with uh, will not be ideal for anyone really, but
Mhm.
it's we're going to have to make changes. And I don't know about your county, but our county out here in the good old Tri-Cities is still in phase 1, and
Right.
it doesn't look like we're going to be out of phase 1 anytime soon. So,
Mm.
um,
Really?
oh yeah, it's I think that among other things, our Benton County needs to have fewer than 50 new cases of COVID within a 14-day period. And I know, at least as of, like, I think either Friday or Saturday, we had 59 new cases in that one day alone.
Oh, geez.
So it's, yeah, it's
But I heard they're counting cases in a way that's not recommended by the health department.
I
So
I don't
I don't
know.
know if that's accurate.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't. I don't know. I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
that's
I just know
crazy.
that it's not looking good, and I
Yeah.
don't think that we can even start in classroom unless we're in like phase 3 or 4. Like, I think if we're in
Mm.
phase 1 or 2, it's going to be all distance learning all the time until the numbers go down.
That's a
So,
good point. I didn't think about the phases and how they relate to the requirement of
mhm.
in-person education. Here in Clark County, we're in phase 2 now,
Right?
and hopefully moving to phase 3 in a couple weeks, maybe. I
Yeah,
know my gym is not going to open till phase 3, which is difficult for us,
sure.
but we
Yeah,
do what we can.
right.
Talking about the COVID in the fall, I know where I'm from, San Diego, the school
Mhm.
district there. My mother said the San Diego Unified School District, their budget is so cut that if they continued operating as normal, they would have to close school after half a year next
Yeah,
year. That's how much it's going down, the budget. So
yeah.
there's that aspect as well, of course.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, no, and I mean, I've luckily, knock on wood, I haven't heard anything about that out here yet. Um,
and
it doesn't.
the first thing to go is, in some people's minds, is the arts program.
It's true.
Unfortunately.
I can't deny that that's something that's often on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though, that the part of the arts that pays for, like, the my supplemental contract, for example, is a very small drop in the bucket in their overall budget. One would hope it wouldn't make too much of a difference. But the I know that the words from Chris Reichtel, the education superintendent for Washington State, has made it clear that the arts are considered essential
Good.
parts of the curriculum. So hopefully that means that they're not gonna, that they're expecting those programs to continue. But I don't know.
Those programs are essential. They save people's lives. I mean,
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
um, I've, I've been told by at least one or two students, that the having the arts like drama and choir saved their life, like literally. So it's it would be incredibly short-sighted um, to cut them. I mean, that being said, it's easy. It's also easy for me to say from the position that I'm in right here. I don't have to make the tough decisions, but it's you got to get a little bit more creative. Use those artistic creative skills, maybe. Yeah.
And as a drama teacher, you teach beginning and advanced drama. How did you continue?
Yep.
How did your students and you adapt to distance learning with COVID-19 and in the drama classes?
That was probably the toughest part of adapting my curriculum once we started doing distance learning. It was really difficult because there are lots of parts of the kind of drama and theater art standards that kind of require people being together and in person. So we kind of have to focus on other things. We had to cancel a play that we had planned. We were in the beginning stages of. We had to actually in the advanced drama class was going to be performing a couple one-act short plays, and those had to get canceled as well. And so just because like the logistics of trying to put a play on, like the kids couldn't get together at all. And so the options kind of ended up being like, well, do we perform over Zoom? Which is not incredibly ideal. Might be able to make it work, but it's I think that when all this went down, there was a really, really big just kind of drop of energy for that kind of thing too. And it was kind of difficult to continue it. So in the classes, what I ended up doing was kind of creating, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say create. I freely borrowed from someone else that made this kind of like menu of different theater projects. And so the students had like all these different options of things they could do online that could be done remotely. There were things from like learning a dance number from a musical that someone kind of teaches like daily to, learning a monologue and performing it, and to doing virtual tours of famous theaters and writing reflections about it, and and so stuff like that.
So they could choose which kind of thing they did from a menu. That's a whole other thing I want to do next fall, is having menus of options, especially in distance learning. That's really cool.
And it was like a weekly thing. So like each week they had to complete one project, and they had each of these different options. And there was like there were 3 different like categories of options. You could do one of these things, or 2 of these things, or 3 of these things. Depending on like the size of the project. So it was pretty handy. And we culminated the year with they all wrote their own monologue from the perspective of a person who was affected by COVID-19 or the recent social unrest we've been going through here. And then I took those monologues and I distributed them to other people so they could kind of get a chance to interpret someone else's writing and someone else's work, and then perform them. And we kind of did like a Zoom meeting where the kids would come and like perform their monologue, or some of them made a video and sent it to me, and I kind of sent it. So the students have like the dual opportunity to not just memorize a monologue, perform it, get feedback on that, but also of writing one and seeing how someone else interprets their writing, which can really kind of help them in their own writing if they see how someone else communicates it, their words. And so that was honestly actually ended up being one of the best things that we did all year.
That sounds really cool.
It was really great. The monologues the students wrote were very passionate, very heartfelt, very vulnerable, and so to see them, like in theater, we kind of require them to get up on stage and get up in front of other people and to take on these different roles, which requires a really high level of making yourself vulnerable and opening yourself up. Because, as I tell the students, speaking in front of a large group is one of the most common fears in the world. And, and so being able to go up there and do that and kind of like let your emotions be raw and feel those things is very difficult to do. And, to see them be able to do that with that project was really gratifying, and it was really cool to see their creativity and their willingness to do that, because it felt like with what they had written, at that point, and we're in like late May, early June,
right.
That they were kind of like ready to kind of process some of the stuff that they were going through. Because I think that like in mid-March and like early April, there was just this kind of like big high level of disappointment about everything that happened. And now at this point we're still not at the end of it, obviously, but like I think that they've had time to process it, and like I hope that this project was part of the processing of it, so they could kind of work through some of their feelings and some of their thoughts about all of this, as they're going through it.
I feel like the domain of English versus mathematics, or maybe a little bit of science, I feel like in English, you're able to so much more freely explore students' social and emotional learning. Doing these monologues has probably helped them grow as people, of course, and work through some of their emotional stuff they've been going through and socialize and things like that. And I feel like in math, it's not as open, but I'm working on that.
Yeah, but it's just different things,
Yeah.
like it's and I'm sure there are different ways that you can kind of do things and tweak things, but
Sure.
it's just part of I guess that I would assume just kind of like the nature of the subject, really.
Well, and that was drama, not English, but
right.
Similar, I would say.
Yeah, and like both with drama and English, you're if you're reading literature, for example, you're analyzing characters and their motivations and their actions and the reasons why they did things, and trying to understand who they are and the arc of their what they're going through. And drama is very much the same way. And excuse me, that's how that we kind of come to learn more about ourselves and our own thoughts and decisions and actions. That's how we develop empathy. That's how we learn to understand about each other and the differences that we have and the things that we go through. And I kind of feel that like, we do that a lot in English class, but in some ways drama and theater is kind of like the master class on that, because you take that kind of that analysis, but then you take it on yourself. You put yourself into those shoes. And it's tough, because I've had students have to play like villains before on stage, and it's really difficult to play a really awful person. I've had students have to play murderers and rapists and really terrible, awful people. And it can be kind of disappointing to them sometimes, like, oh, I have to play the bad guy. I mean, sometimes a bad guy can be fun if it's depending on how the character is structured, but like we did a play based off of a novel called Speak a couple years ago, which involves a high school character who ends up being raped by a fellow high school student. And one of our students ended up having to play that terrible person, and another student had to play the victim also, which is an incredibly difficult thing to kind of try to have to wrap your head around and put yourself in that headspace. Can be really emotionally draining and taxing for both of them. And so we had to work very hard to take a lot of care to make sure that they felt comfortable about it, but like just trying to put yourself in those characters' shoes and kind of understand who they are. Like it's they're real people. They're not just like villains or archetypes. They're not just a label. They're actual people, and people do terrible things sometimes. And trying to wrap your head around that and how that works is, I mean, it's kind of more advanced for some of the students, but it's something that, they can do. And I think that it's beneficial to them as people. I tell the students that, like, hey, maybe one of you in this room right now might end up being a college theater major, and that's great if you want to do that. I don't expect many of you to do that. But I really fully believe that every one of you will come out of this class being a better person, have better social emotional skills, better communicators, things like that. And in some ways, it's one of those really hard to quantify things, as often as the nature of the arts. But and in teaching in general, like once our students graduate and move on, we don't necessarily get to see the fruits of those labors, right? Like,
Right.
You might hear from someone like, oh, so-and-so went to college and became this, or this person became an engineer, this person did this. And you might hear that, but from like a couple of students, but you kind of have to have faith that the lessons that you're giving them and the experiences that you're giving them are making them better people and better citizens of the country. And I think that, I really believe that that's what the drama and the theater arts and really all arts in general do.
Wow. I had a little bit of dabbling in acting when I was in middle school. And that was so fun. I always thought I should try getting more into drama and acting. And then I thought, as I got older and saw, such actors getting too much into it, as like Heath Ledger, for example. Getting way too into the character and kind of going crazy off the deep end. And I thought that would probably be me. So I should probably stay away from it. I don't know.
Yeah, that kind of like method style of acting. It's a thing. It works for some people, doesn't work for everyone. It's a philosophy, if you will.
Yeah. So I guess it's never too late for me. But maybe
no, absolutely not. I'm very certain that once this all dies down, the COVID stuff, I'm sure Vancouver has a community theater that is looking for amateur actors, and I'm sure there's the different things you can do. It's not too late. Just saying.
And my brother, he does improv, and with COVID, he's in Arizona, but shout out to Danny. In Arizona, they did with their improv group, they did a Zoom show where it was pretty funny, actually. So
it's great. The creativity of the arts community right now is really great to see. I used to do improv in Seattle too. I performed with Jet City Improv. And they are doing some kind of like Zoom shows as well. There's a type of show that they do called Twisted Flicks, where they like improvise and redub lines from like old bad B movies.
Oh, cool.
So like they like remove all the dialogue and all the soundtrack and all the sound, and then they like redub it and improvise all the characters and the soundtrack and the sound effects and all that stuff live. And that was a format that I think has been translating really well for them through this, because it's like, you're watching the movie, you're watching, like some really bad old black and white sci-fi, campy type movie. And, you just hear their voices going for the characters. So it's pretty cool.
It's called Twisted Flicks.
Yeah, Twisted Flicks.
Can people check it out if they Google it?
Oh, sure, yeah. If you Google Jet City Improv or Twisted Flicks, I'm sure. They could. Some good people down there. That's my friends, my former family, really.
So you also, to get to the core of your teaching this year, you taught pre-AP English to sophomores and also regular sophomore English.
I hate to say regular. It's like standard. I don't know, but yeah, sure.
Mainstream. I don't know what to call it. Non-pre-AP, I guess. But what are some of what are some of the unique challenges and joys of teaching advanced versus non-advanced sophomore English?
Well, so the advanced class is great in that you get to kind of delve into things a little bit deeper, more depth, and there's more breadth of stuff.
Because you go
Um,
faster.
you do go a little bit faster. There's more content for you to cover.
Mm.
Um, but I've found that the conversations are a little bit more in depth.
Mm.
I mean, generally speaking, kids who are in pre-AP are more reliable students when it comes to like turning work in.
Mm-hmm.
Their work is often stronger, although certainly not always.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a high level of expectation, and so the students often reach that level too.
Mm-hmm.
But I like teaching both, though. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's uh, you get a lot out of both classes. The non pre AP English class, I also have a lot of students who are in like a reading lab class.
Mm-hmm.
So for kids who like struggle with reading,
Okay.
which is a class that I've taught in the past and I'm going to teach next year, but I didn't teach
Mm.
this year. Um, and so having those groups of kids in the class, kind of helping them to get to be better readers is also like pretty rewarding,
Mm-hmm.
because it's reading is obviously an important trait for any person, but it's that one skill that's really involved in like literally every single class.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Yeah.
math, of course.
Right.
It's I'm sure in health and maybe even in PE, who knows, but
Oh yeah.
you know
Mm-hmm.
it's that reading skill is so crucial and so important, and so um, being able to work with those kids and help them get reach standard, which is something that is so vital for them, is
Mm-hmm.
also very rewarding, in
Mm-hmm.
working with them. And then with the pre-AP kids, that class is a little bit more like a college class,
Mm.
almost really. It's kind of supposed to be like the I remember when I went through training for it, the instructor said that we should kind of think of the pre-AP English class as like a 12th grade class, even
Okay.
though it's for 10th graders,
Mm-hmm.
because it's supposed to prepare them for the AP level coursework, which is supposed to be college
Mm-hmm.
level. So
That
um,
makes sense.
yeah. So it's like the conversations can sometimes be a little bit more like college like, which is good in some ways, but then getting having the conversations in the other class is really great too, because you get some more like unique and different perspectives on
Mm-hmm.
things, and also very valuable. And I have fun with both classes. Like
Mm-hmm.
they have different energies a lot of the time, and you know it's good though.
Mm.
I like both of them.
In math, there's a movement to detrack
Yeah.
kids.
Hmm.
And there's research showing that tracking, and for those that don't know what tracking is, it's when you put students in different classes according to their ability. So you might have an honors math class and a regular math class. You might have a math lab where you're helping students as an additional class, or maybe even a lower class than the on grade level math. And probably in English too, there's been a lot of research on how tracking hurts students, not just students that are on grade level or below, but also students that are above grade level. There's been research showing that detracking helps those students being in just a class of mixed abilities. Um, so I don't know how you
Oh,
feel about
absolutely.
that. Mm-hmm.
Well, so at our school in the math, or sorry, in the English, we don't track our ninth graders. So our
Okay.
ninth graders are all like integrated, and it's actually a
Mm-hmm.
bit controversial. I
Mm-hmm.
know
Oh
that
yeah.
at some schools, maybe even in our district, I think, have like an honors level ninth grade class.
Mm.
And it is certainly a source of controversy among parents,
Mm-hmm.
parents of the kids who probably should be, or could be, I should say, in an
Mm-hmm.
honors level class.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of tend towards I would rather not track personally. I think
Yeah.
that the kids who are higher level benefit from the kids who are not at a quite at a higher level by getting a more diverse experience. You have different funds of knowledge to draw from, to use a buzz phrase. And you just get like there are different assets that the students come to the classroom with that may not be quantifiable in the same way.
Sure.
That I think that some of those higher level classes that are tracked that the students miss out on. And I think that for the lower level students, they benefit by having peers who are at a higher level and can help them, and they learn from each other so much. I mean, it if I had it my way, I probably wouldn't track even into the 10th grade. Once you get into like for English, there are the 11th and 12th grade AP
Sure.
advanced placement level options that they could take, and that's like college level coursework. And I think that, I suppose at that point, if you really wanted to make that choice and kind of move on in that direction, I think that's your choice. But I'm kind of there with what you were saying there. I think that it could be beneficial to all of them to have less tracking.
And
and I'm very glad that we don't in 9th grade.
Good. Yeah, no, that sounds great. I think that if you do track later in the K-12 system, I think all students should have the choice of being in the, higher level class. If they want to challenge themselves and be in that higher level class, then they should have the chance, the opportunity to. And I think we just put them in there arbitrarily based on test scores or their grade the year before, but those factors are based on, those outcomes are based on so many other factors. So student choice, I think, should be more involved in tracking if it's going to exist too.
I agree.
And you said you're also you had told me the other day, you're also the advisor currently at your school for the Gay Straight Alliance?
Yeah.
Okay, and have you been able to continue doing that during quarantine?
Unfortunately, I haven't really. It's difficult because with that club and with that group, we didn't have the greatest network for communication kind of set up to be able to converse with those folks. I've been in contact with a few of them and gotten a little bit of word out, kind of here and there, but it's really tough because, for one, the club, our GSA is kind of loosely formed. I mean, there's not really like there's not like a membership list where kids sign up to it.
Right.
The club, drop in, like we meet like once a week during lunch. And so like, especially because of the nature of the club, some kids are not out to their family. Some kids are not out to the rest of the school. And so they may show up to my classroom at lunch, but they don't want to necessarily get on a Remind text group that sends the message and their parent looks at their phone and be like, what's this about? And so it's kind of difficult because each kid is in like a different kind of stage of their their journey, so to speak, in regards to that
situation.
And so it's been difficult. When our club first started, some students approached me and were like, hey, will you be the advisor for our GSA? I was like, sure, what do you guys want to do? They're like, we just want a safe place to eat lunch because we don't feel safe other places. And I was like, well, come on in, and so it during certain years, it's kind of like ebbed and flowed, depending on the student leadership about what we do and what we accomplish. Sometimes it's, they organize and they get things together. They do like extra, like outside of school meetups and things like that. Other times it's like, hey, we're just going to eat lunch here and be ourselves for 45 minutes. And that's all that we can really do right now. So it kind of depends year to year, So yeah, that's where we're at right now. And unfortunately, I haven't really been able to contact them much throughout this year.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if you're in person in the fall, can prepare for a situation like this happening again. And
Absolutely, yeah. That was a
yeah,
thing that, like, just didn't end up,
right,
happening, unfortunately. And
right.
yeah, in the
Well, it
fall, I
happened
really
so
hope so.
fast, the
It
closure.
did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also, like, it's tough because some of the things that got canceled, like we have a every year we have this kind of thing called Brave Day, which is
Mm-hmm.
like on a Saturday where like all the eighth graders get to kind of from who are going to be at our high school the next year, get to kind of come in for a couple during a couple hour period on a Saturday and get to see
Mm,
all the different clubs and all the
mm-hmm.
different sports and all the different
Mm-hmm.
this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of get a chance to see, like, oh hey, there's that, and oh hey, drama, or oh there's choir, oh hey, there's a GSA, interesting, I'm gonna file that away. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you don't even have to tell their parents that they're looking at that and thinking about it, but just like,
Right.
our GSA had a table there, and so it was like
Mm-hmm.
just having that visibility to let other people know that we exist,
Mm-hmm.
was good and helpful for a lot of kids, because a lot of them wouldn't really know otherwise. So
Yeah.
so we didn't get to do that this year either, because that ended up getting canceled due to COVID too.
When
So
is Brave Day usually happen? Like in June,
gosh, it's
May?
in like April, I think, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Right around after like I think it's supposed to be like before they register or something,
Mm.
so that they can kind of get an idea of some of the things that are happening around. I try to like catch a few kids and trick them into joining drama. I mean, convince them into joining drama, and get them to sign up for the class and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that are canceled that are just putting kind of a wrench in the gear of everyday life and of future plans, for sure. We're going to have to adapt and change very quickly. And like you said, hopefully
Yeah.
we'll be, in person in the fall. Um, so,
Yeah, I kind of doubt that our county will be, to be honest. But
mm,
I'm hope for other places, that are further along in their
mm-hmm,
phases. I hope for them too,
mm-hmm.
and I think that
We'll
they're more
see.
likely to. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that if in phase two you're theoretically not supposed to have groups of more than 5 people or something like that.
Mm,
In phase, so like unless we're in phase 3 or 4, we're not going to be in classrooms. So
right,
um,
right. Right.
yeah.
I didn't even think of aligning the phases with how much school can happen, because I didn't think gatherings in schools counted because it's indoor. I don't know. I'll have to look at it and see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and
Hmm.
especially tough for me. I mean, and for students, obviously, it's tougher for students. I mean, really,
Right.
but like I, as a teacher,
Hmm.
I feel like I depend so much on like developing like a personal relationship with the
Hmm.
students, and like my rapport with them in front of the classroom,
Hmm.
and in front of a computer,
Hmm.
even like on a Zoom call,
Hmm.
it just, God, it like removes every personal touch for me. And like it's difficult for me to kind of like try to get to know kids through digital means, like
Well, even if we're in person, we're gonna have to wear masks. So I'm already thinking I'll wear a face shield so they can at least see my
yeah,
face.
I know, yeah, and that certainly is not going to help. Yeah, wearing a
Hmm.
mask, but it's
Hmm.
something though. Like, I don't know, I feel like there's something about being there in person.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm a fairly gregarious, outgoing
Mhm.
person, and so
Mhm.
it's as an extrovert, it's something that's helpful for me. I mean, I know that. I mean, there are some students who are introverts who have thrived during this time,
Sure.
and some who are extroverts who have had a really tough time. And
Mhm.
so it's you know
Everybody
it,
has their challenges that they're going through because of this,
for sure.
but it's also got a few silver linings, of course, and that's good to find those too. But it is definitely going to be difficult as teachers and, of course, as students, especially if we have to continue distance learning. And my hairdresser the other day, I got my hair cut for the first time since
Oh,
February on
jealous.
Friday. My
Yeah.
hairdresser said, I think, if everyone's going to continue learning online, it's going to raise a whole generation of antisocial kids. I said, well, it's kind of already doing that because they're on their phones all the time. But
Yeah, I don't know. I think there will still be there's still going to be the need for human interaction. I think,
mm-hmm,
I mean, some people are just wired differently for sure, but I
mm-hmm,
think, there's a need for that human interaction.
absolutely.
I was supposed to, I had an appointment scheduled with my hairstylist like on June 11th, but that certainly didn't happen because we're still all locked
Mm-hmm,
down here. So I had
mm-hmm.
to just today, I had to like trim my beard and, like I'm kind of like, I've not given in to letting my wife give me a COVID haircut yet, but and she doesn't really. I mean, I don't really want her to, and she doesn't really want to either. So it's gonna keep
Yeah.
going.
Well, I had a very short asymmetrical haircut, so it's been growing out at different, you know,
Right.
so it's more even now. It was like really bad.
Oh wow.
But yeah, it was really short. Now I'm gonna grow it out, man.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
um let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
What is your self-care routine? What do you do to stay inspired and focused and to be your best self when working with kids and in general?
So, do you mean during COVID or like under normal circumstances?
While teaching under normal circumstances, and how has it changed for COVID?
Okay, so under normal circumstances, it's honestly it's pretty difficult. Being the drama teacher and the drama like play director and stuff like that requires me to be working so much more already than teachers already do. Like and any teacher who is involved in an activity will do the same thing. But there
Mm-hmm.
are some days, like, well, any given week, when I'm in rehearsal, I'm at school until like 4:30 or 5 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
and I get in there at like 6:45, 6:50 or so in the morning. And so it's, coming home, um, seeing my kids. I have two small kids. I have a
Mm-hmm.
5-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But having certain routines, helps. Like that just kind of helps me to get through stuff is having routines, I guess. And actually during COVID also, like that's one of the things I think I've struggled with. And I've gone through my own, like mental health struggles during COVID, but trying to put yourself in a routine that feels a little bit normal,
Mm-hmm.
I think is helpful during
Yeah.
COVID, and during normal the before times. We it kind of helps with that because it's like, okay, I get home, I see the kids, make them dinner, we do whatever for a little bit, kind of sack out for a little bit, kids go to sleep, my wife and I like watch a TV show together, get in bed, maybe do a crossword puzzle or whatever, and like just, kind of making sure that we take that time and,
Mm-hmm.
um, and because of that, all that extra time that I have to do with the drama stuff, like I end up, working on weekends regularly,
Mm-hmm.
but trying to
Traveling.
make, yeah, well, and also, yeah, some of that too, and just trying to make sure that I take at least one day on the weekends to like not do anything school related
Mm-hmm.
unless there's some other kind of circumstances, but like usually it'll be like a Sunday where like, okay, Sunday's completely family time, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll just devote it all to family, whereas like on a Saturday maybe I might take a few hours to do some grading or other
Mm-hmm.
stuff, because it's as you well know and any teacher knows, like the grading can pile up, and
Mm-hmm.
when I'm you know quote unquote done with my school day at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and if I've been at school for like 10 hours, I don't necessarily feel like sitting down and reading a bunch of essays,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's trying to give myself energy, have creative outlets, like
Mm-hmm.
the being the drama teacher, and being able to direct plays and solve creative problems and things like that is one of the things that exhausts me and takes up a lot of my time, but is also one of the things that allows me to do the other stuff that I need to do, because it's
Mm-hmm.
it's also my outlet at the same time. And so I take time for myself, to read sometimes, or like listen to podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, maybe like, go for a walk, get some fresh air, something like that.
I
But
checked out Omnibus. They talked about poop for the first half of the podcast.
that was, I felt so bad because like I recommended that to you, and then I was like, oh great, this is the first one she's going to listen to, and like that was not they're not all like that, I promise.
You should send me like an episode that you recommend I listen to that maybe more representative of what they do.
I'll send you one. There are some better, more interesting. I was just like, oh gosh, of course, like, that'd be the one.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
What are your other creative outlets? You mentioned doing things to give yourself energy and having creative outlets. Do you have other things?
So it kind of depends. Like a lot of it evolves around theater, so like going to see shows that my friends are in. I like to play board games a lot. I have a giant board game collection, and I can find time to play with friends. I try to do that. Lately we've been figuring out ways to play board games like remotely, which is kind of cool. And so stuff like that, trying to find hobbies or other things, sometimes, like I've brewed beer before. My
husband is a winemaker.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. I just for Father's Day got a lock picking kit, because I was like,
oh yeah, happy Father's Day. And I was going to mention the lock picking kit.
And so I was just like, because I told my wife, I was like, I need like a hobby. I'm like, now that the school year's over and we can't really go out and do much, like I was like, I don't know, like lock picking or something. And so now I have a lock picking kit, and I need to learn how to pick locks. So, I mean, that's like a skill, right? That could be valuable someday. Who knows?
It could be. You never know. It's something to do, that's tactile. And
with your hands, exactly. That was the thing.
Learning.
I wanted something that I could do with my hands, like something like that. So it's also, like at this time of year out here in the Tri-Cities, in the summer, it just starts getting really oppressively hot.
Right.
As you know.
I lived there for 10 years about. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be on the west side now, where it's raining.
Yes.
More mild.
Yeah, we'll move back at some point. I'm from the west side originally, from the Seattle area.
Okay.
Grew up in Linwood, but so we do miss it.
Tri-Cities is a good place to raise a family. I'll admit that.
Oh yeah, it's
that I know from experience.
It's good. It's definitely grown on me. It took me a little while to kind of get it, but now that we have like a community out here, it's a lot better. It was funny because like I never would have thought I would have moved to Eastern Washington, but after I graduated with my teaching degree, I applied to a whole bunch of schools on the west side, and I didn't even get like an interview for anything. And so I spent like a year subbing and doing kind of like other like retail jobs, like with this like master's degree in teaching that I wanted to use. And then like after that, I was like, okay, I got to expand my search. So I, expanded it to Eastern Washington and ended up getting hired on like a 1-year leave of absence contract for a person who just like never came back. So
lucky you.
That was how I stayed on. Yeah, now I just finished up year 7 here. So
wow,
who knows?
That's funny, huh? Lucky.
Yeah.
Now that you have all that experience, you can probably move back to Seattle. Huh?
We will at some point.
Yeah.
It's like my wife just she's been a paraeducator, and she just finished up her second bachelor's degree, and this one's in education, and so she just got certificated to teach like elementary school. And
congratulations to her. Yeah. And special ed, you said?
Yep, special ed and elementary
great. Wonderful
education. And so she's got she's going to be working in Richland coming up here this year. So
Oh,
I think maybe
fantastic.
after a couple years out here, we might end up moving back. But
Cool.
at least for now,
Hmm.
it's where we are.
And your oldest is 5 years old, so is she starting school then? Because you start
We
at like 5, right?
Yeah, she's gonna actually do preschool this year. We're sort of holding her back, not really, because I mean she would have made the cutoff, but she was born premature.
Mm,
She was born at 28 weeks, so like almost like
mm.
3 months earlier. So
Wow.
um, she was 1 pound 15 ounces when she was born, um,
Wow.
and so
Miracle baby.
right. No, yeah, seriously. And so if she had been born on her due date, she would have missed the cutoff for kindergarten. And
Mm,
because she was born early, she made it. But we decided that for her, because she has like a few like minor delays in a
mm-hmm,
few areas that we wanted to just kind of like, we'll wait until the
mm-hmm.
next year, and
Sure.
she'll do preschool this year, and then she'll
Nice.
do kindergarten the following year. So.
That can only benefit her, of course.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially
So.
in this day and age with the COVID
Mhm.
and everything. Hopefully by next
Yeah.
year we'll all be back to
Man,
normal. We'll see.
gosh, yeah, normal question mark? Yeah, who
Yeah,
knows? I don't know what even normal's gonna look like.
I know. So I'm gonna go into the wrap-up questions that I
All right.
have told myself I will ask every time. We'll
Okay.
see if this is only the second time I'm trying them out on a guest, so we'll see.
All right.
Um, what is a skill or quality you have that you are most proud of
Mm. Like when it comes to teaching or just
in
anything in
general?
life? Okay. Well, I'll even relate this to teaching. I feel like I can think pretty well on the fly,
Okay.
and improvise, for lack of a better term. I mean, being a person who's gone through training in improv and performed improv, it being able to think creatively and outside the box while on my feet has been really incredibly helpful for me as a teacher.
Mm,
As you know, and any teacher knows, lessons rarely go as planned. And so you have to be able to pivot, to adapt, to make changes on things, and
mhm.
you know uh, that's what you just have to do sometimes, and I think that I'm pretty good at that. That's I think that's one of my skills.
Do you have a specific memory of a specific story of a time when you had to pivot in a
So
teaching?
yeah, actually, so the just very specifically, like, um just back in March here, before the stay-at-home order, we had students. Everyone's kind of freaked out about COVID. We didn't know what was going on. People,
Mm-hmm.
before any cases had even reached our area, our county, kids, there's like rumors going around. Oh, I heard
Mm-hmm.
one person over here, and then, oh, no, no, like,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was very clearly like all on their minds. And
Mm-hmm.
so he was like, well, I could try to just proceed with my lesson and have them be completely distracted and not
Mm-hmm.
really paying attention, not really thinking about having anxiety, legitimate anxiety and fear about this whole thing, or we could just like talk it all out. And I decided, like, hey, let's just talk it all out. What are your questions? Here's what I know. Here's resources. Here's like an article from a reputable source,
Mm.
and not just a rumor, that says some things here. Like, what are you feeling about it? What
Mm-hmm.
questions do you have? Here's
Mm-hmm.
my take on this. And so,
Mm-hmm.
that day, every single class, I think, except for like maybe one of them, we talked like for the entire time about their thoughts, their fears, their anxieties with all the COVID stuff that was
Mm-hmm.
starting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't feel like, we were wasting time, or it
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like we were like filling dead air or anything like that. It was just like they had like actual concerns and questions, and they wanted to know things, and talk it out and be reassured. And it's like, and I might not have had a lot of reassuring things, but I think that once if you start to be able to talk through things, get a better idea of what things actually are,
Mm-hmm.
then you can process a bit better, and can help alleviate some of those anxieties and fears. And I felt that that was necessary. Sometimes you kind of,
Right.
I mean, in that case, I had to throw the whole lesson plan out the window and just facilitate a conversation on like what was going around. Sometimes there are more important things in the world than why Boo Radley put the items in the knot hole for Scout and Gem to find.
Shout out
Uh,
to Kill a Mockingbird. I gotta read that again one of these days. I remember I read that in school, but it's one of
we
the
all did.
it's one of the few books I actually did read. Not that
I hear
I
that a
did
lot.
Cliff Notes or something. I just, I was on the kind of nerdy track where I took all the AP and honors classes, but that was in math and science. In English, I was such a bookworm and I didn't like classics. So I decided to take the regular English classes and not take the AP and honors classes because I didn't want to be told what to read.
Yeah.
I regret that now, of course, but whatever. Yeah. I'll go back and read Grapes of Wrath and all that good stuff, I guess.
Yeah, that's okay. You can leave that behind.
Really?
Actually,
Jane Austen and
yeah. Well, so something funny. So during COVID, I was like, so one of my as an English teacher, one of the things that I wish I had a better knowledge of is like the classics, because since I was never an English major, I'm not as quite well read in the English literature canon. So for COVID, since it was like, well, we've got lots of extra time on my hands, I was like, I'm going to read Moby Dick. Gosh darn it.
Oh no.
The 1,000 plus page,
I didn't even know what he was saying after like the first couple pages.
No one does. But like, no. So what I've done is I downloaded the audiobook, and I've been very slowly working my way through it. And I'm on like, I don't know, chapter 110 out of 130 or something like that now.
Good
so I'm getting there, but it's like, it's funny because like when you download an audiobook, you get it for like 21 days and then you get to like return it. And, if someone else has it on hold, then you wouldn't be able to get it until they're done with it. But there's not a rush for Moby Dick on audiobook right now. Shocker. So I've like renewed it like 5 different times over the COVID stay. So like I'm almost there, so I can finish it finally.
I'm doing the same thing through my library with ebooks. I'm not into the audiobooks yet, but I'm getting into the reading ebooks with the Kindle app on my iPhone. I don't have a Kindle. I just learned a couple months ago that you can get a Kindle app on your iPhone. I didn't know this. So anyways, I've discovered that. So that's been good. And yeah, I've had to rent it for 21 days, this fantasy book that I'm really into. Then there was 2 other people waiting for it. So I was waiting and waiting, marked the chapter I was on, and now I have it again. So that's good. But but that's funny.
My wife did that. My wife did that with a book recently, and then it ran out, and then someone else had it on hold, so she couldn't check it out, and she had like, I don't know, 25 pages or something like that left to read. So she couldn't get to the end of the book, so she just bought it. She was like, I'm just gonna buy it because I want to finish reading it.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. What is a skill or quality you have that you plan to work on this year? You kind of answered it with the classics, but
yeah, I mean, that's one thing. I really, though, I want to get better at distance learning and distance teaching, and so I've been doing a lot of professional development on that kind of stuff. I've done like Google training for like Google Classroom and stuff, which I've already been using, but trying to get better at it. I've done some other kind of like distance learning workshops and other things. So just trying to utilize, what resources we have. It might not be the most ideal situation, certainly not for my teaching style, but it doesn't mean that I can't and shouldn't go out and try to get as many resources as I can. So trying to find like different apps to use or like digital resources and things like that I to kind of get better. I think that like what I kind of ended up doing this year for the rest of the school year after like March 17th was I was trying to like fit my old curriculum into this digital distance learning model.
Right.
and it wasn't as effective because it wasn't
Mhm.
designed
Mhm.
to be like that. And so I want to be able to better design my curriculum for a distance model that could be more beneficial for students, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, especially if we're gonna have like in San Diego, for example, they're letting parents choose whether they want their kids to do distance learning or to be physically in school. I don't know how we're going to do that as
Mhm.
teachers, whether they'll have, one teacher designated to the distance learning students and the rest working in person. But it makes sense that uh, they're going to have teachers decide on essential standards, narrow down the standards for distance learning. That makes sense, and I agree. It's not ideal to teach over the internet, but we have to make it the best version of it that it can be. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
what else do you recommend, or where else do you recommend people learn about topics that you're passionate about, like drama and theater and English and things like that?
It's difficult right now because of COVID, but
Mm-hmm.
go out into your arts community, go see a play.
Mm-hmm.
Even, like look through, I don't know if there's like an online bulletin board or a newspaper or something like that, or, like just go out and support the local arts community. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, Odds are you have at least one friend that's involved in it in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Or a
go out and
student
see a
if you're a
show.
teacher. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
See your
Um,
students, please.
yeah, yeah. And so go out and see a show, go out and see a symphony, go out
Mm-hmm.
and see something like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
the best way I think that, at least for the art forms, like theater, that I am, that I do professionally, the best way to understand it is to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
So like go out and see it. Go see a high school play. Go, support your students in that way, I guess, for other teachers. But for, like, you don't have to know the kids to see the show, and they are often pretty good too. So
Yeah. And if you're a teacher and you don't know any students in the play, you definitely know some students that are watching the play. You can
100%.
then talk to them about it
Yeah.
and
And
know about it. Yeah.
yeah, and visibility matters for teachers. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know firsthand that the students love seeing their teachers in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
They do, and so if you can, go see a football game. Go
Mm-hmm.
see a swim meet. Go to
Mm-hmm.
a track meet. Go to a volleyball game. Like go to those things where you can watch it, support them, they can see you. You can get a better understanding of them and who they are too from that.
They see more than you think.
Absolutely.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today, and it was a pleasure talking with you. I really appreciate you being a guest, and that wraps it up for us.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a blast.
All right, I'm going to press stop. Thank you so much for listening to or watching Tack Talk with MRS Hood. Please subscribe to us on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Podbean. It's really great because there's 4 different places you can find us. So it's Monday, June 22nd, 2020, and it's 81 degrees here. I think I'll have lunch and go for a walk. Peace out, everybody.